Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Lucky Group. Today I'm joined by the wonderful Beychu Droma. Now Beychu is a dreamer author and she's written a memoir called The Path of You Stage. Now I've started reading the book and my lord, I can definitely say it is an absolutely great book. Now, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would it be?
If I could go anywhere in the world, um, if I can hijack the question, it would be somewhere in my memory, which is still a real place. So it's my childhood home in Lhasa, which is the capital of Tibet. I grew up there with my grandmother, my mom, and my sister, and our two dogs. That house, unfortunately, is no longer ours. And of course, the way that I remember it, the city, the house, everything doesn't exist anymore. But if I could travel, to somewhere, that's the place I would love to go back to and visit again.
Definitely. It sounds like you've got a lot of memories there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, if you could have a meal with five famous people dead or alive, who would they be and why?
Okay, good question. So I think the first person I would pick, I think someone that I've always kind of been interested in since I've heard about her is Hatshepsut. So she was the first of the female pharaohs in Egypt. And yeah, she's really interesting because she dressed like a man, and also there were statues of her where she is ornated as a male pharaoh. Although I think it was an open secret that she was a female pharaoh, and she managed to kind of rule the kingdom of Egypt, and also to have this fantastic reputation, although at the time it was really kind of rare and unusual to have a woman at the helm of such power. So I think she's a really interesting character. I'd love to have her. um, I would also be really interested in having the Tibetan king Sonsen Gampo, who was the founder of the Tibetan Empire. So Tibet used to have quite a large empire in Central Asia, which a lot of people don't know about. So yeah, it would be really interesting to talk to him. Um, I would also quite like to invite Jesus, just because Christianity has such a important history and role in shaping the modern world, specifically in the Western world. And of course, I think for those of us who are not religious and not Christians, historically, the character of Jesus Christ, I think there's also a question of whether he existed. So I would love to invite him for dinner. And then I would like to invite Michelle Obama. I've always really admired her and her husband, of course, too. But yeah, I find her to be super interesting. So I'd love to have her at the dinner table. So that's four, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the last person, I think it would be a personal pick. So I've heard stories about her, but I don't know much about her. And she is my great, great, great grandmother. So the grandmother of my great grandmother. So I've met my great grandmother, and I've heard stories about her grandmother and her three and her two sisters. Um, but I think, like all of us, unless you're coming from, some kind of nobility or royalty, it's quite hard to trace back and know personally the people in your
yeah,
ancestry. So I think it would be kind of cool to meet her. So yeah, those are the five people I would pick.
definitely. Now, please get into the book.
Hmm.
Could you explain the meaning behind the part of you stayed.
Yeah, thank you for reading the book, and thank you for your kind words at the beginning of the podcast. In terms of the actual meaning of the phrase, "a part of you stayed," I think once people read the book, there is a specific chapter where I kind of explain and recall the title. But in terms of the message of the book, for me, it's really about the relationship between human beings. I think the connections that we have with each other is one of the most precious and rare gifts that we possess as human beings. And I think, and I truly believe that love is probably one of our greatest sources of power. And the book is really looking at these two things, love and human connection. And it's exploring the boundaries, of those two things. In the book, love takes on different shapes and meanings, and the connections that are forged between myself and the people around me, and with Bart, who the book is about, my experience with him. That also morphs over time. And yeah, for me, it's been a really a real kind of exploration of the boundaries and the power and the yeah, kind of infinite sort of possibilities that love can bring us. So yeah, I think that's the message of the book. And in terms of the actual events of the book, it is about my friend now and my ex-boyfriend, who I've been together with for 4.5 years, and he was involved in a hit and run and sustained a very severe brain injury. And the book kind of tracks the years post that accident and everything that we went through together.
Now, I met you about the competition public law conference where I had this book, and when you read the extract, I was trying to fill because now I can kind of in a way resonate with that, but it was kind of nice to hear about how it affects the family of the person and the friends.
Um, Yeah, so yeah, it was really nice to meet you at the conference. And yeah, thank you for inviting me on the podcast after we'd met. And yeah, it was really nice as well that you got to meet Bart.
Yes,
Um, I guess you're asking me about how I felt, right? When I
yes,
found.
how did because it's you put in the book that you saved his financial to the location. How did it feel when you were on the location where you saw Papa?
Yeah,
When you saw him, how did it feel?
yeah, I mean, um, I think it was, I think I was probably in shock,
Yeah,
to be honest, and it was really overwhelming. Um, I feel like I kind of, yeah, I think in some ways I was always scared of something like that happening.
yeah,
And then when it did happen, I think I was in shock. But I also kind of went into a mindset of wanting to react and respond very quickly and do everything right by
yeah.
him, because everything was really urgent and I had found him, quite sort of quickly after the accident. So I was in action mode. And I think that shock probably lasted for quite a while. And in some ways, some events are really clear to me from those times, but then everything else that was outside of Bart and kind of keeping him alive is really a bit of a blur. So yeah.
But I know in the book you say, but like, yeah, it's like you must have thought everything that you've done beforehand was this murder the last thing that you would do together. And one day going to the last time that you saw him.
So yeah, my thoughts when I saw him, right? That's what you're asking
Yeah.
me. And I think well, I saw him for the first time in the hospital.
Yeah.
He so yeah, I mean, it was odd because I felt like I felt afraid both of what had happened, but I was also really afraid to hurt him more.
Mm.
You know, he looked exactly like the person that I loved and I still love and knew. But he was also so fragile, and I had already heard about what had happened to him from the police. Um, and yeah, I guess I just didn't really know what to expect when I saw him. Maybe I expected that I would see more blood, or I would see, kind of, sort of really clear signs of injury. But the way that he had sustained the injury, it was really just on his skull. So he had cracked his skull and fractured it in multiple places. And when I saw him in that first moment, they had put something in his skull to relieve the pressure. So I saw this instrument kind of coming out of his head, but like the rest of his body, apart from I think he cracked a rib, everything else on his body seemed completely normal. So that was also really disorientating. But yeah, it was a really shocking and yet kind of really strange moment that I will never forget, especially because I was there alone too.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, he seemed really normal in some ways. He just had his eyes closed and he didn't have any other severe injuries. But at the same time, I felt like I didn't recognize him because of where he was and with the, bolt coming out of his head. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you, you, you must have felt the sick in that moment.
Yeah.
He must have felt like, what? How? He must have felt like, I mean, I'd be, I'd be feeling guilty. I mean, we were, you were, you were involved, but you feel, I don't know, I will do about it, but I feel like second game.
Yeah.
Now, how long after that, were you told they had acquired the
I was told, I mean, pretty much straight away because, I found him at the scene of the accident and then the police drove me to the hospital and they had already told me that suffered cardiac arrest at the scene. They had given him CPR and that he had sustained head injury. When I got to the hospital, the surgeon told me about the nature of Bart's injury and the operation that they would have to do. Yeah, it was kind of told to me straight away. Of course, at first I didn't really understand what that would mean. You know, um, I hadn't been familiar with acquired brain injury before or traumatic brain injuries before, aside from things that you might read in the news. But of course, every individual who suffers an acquired brain injury, um, even if they suffered exactly the same injury, can have completely different outcomes, right? So yeah, I think for me, I understood what they were telling me, but I didn't know exactly what it meant. And it was over the weeks in intensive care afterwards that the doctors really took time to explain to myself and Bart's family about the nature of his injuries, which was, really in his frontal lobes. Mostly, and what that could mean. And to be honest, for weeks we were not even sure if he would wake up from his coma or whether if he would survive. And the doctors didn't really have a prognosis for a while because they couldn't observe him. When he was conscious. So they told us that, there might be a chance that he would be in a vegetative state, that he might be locked in, or that he would have a completely altered personality. They were not sure about what memories he would retain, his ability to speak, breathe, eat, all of that. So yeah, that was, so I was told within the first instance, but I didn't really understand what it meant until the weeks afterwards. And to be honest, I feel like even today,
Well,
watching, the way Bart is changing and improving, I'm still understanding what
that's
it
what I
means.
feel. Yeah, because I know that in the book you say that you've asked the doctors if you can give you a real chance of survival.
Hmm.
Everything that you couldn't hit you and on the after the ballpark field.
Yeah,
And if healing myself is 30%,
yeah,
of the rounds, like, how like, how was it ironic because the situation was sick, but it's a little bit because, like, having seen that at the conference, he, he is, he is, like, considering not 30% chance of survival. He,
yeah.
he doesn't bloody well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like you said, I kind of pushed the doctors to give me a ballpark, which I think was quite harsh in that moment.
Yeah.
But the way that my brain works, I was just like, I need to have something, right, to hold
Yeah.
on to. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I wanted to have some indication of, how bad it was. Because as I said, when I saw him, it wasn't like he had blood everywhere or that he
Yeah.
had broken limbs. So yeah, and yeah, you saw Bart now, and he's so uh, yeah, and he's so fantastic. I mean, he's so driven, and he's volunteering, and he's trying to go to the gym a few times a week, and he's learning how to drum. So yeah, it's so wild kind of looking back at how far he's come. And that's what I meant about acquired brain injuries as well. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm still learning, right? About
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, like I say, came out only a couple of years ago of learning about him and learning about the statistics. I can't say the statistic in the book of 30%. Compare that to now.
Yeah.
It's his progress. He has made phenomenal progress.
Yeah, he really has. And um I I think, deep down, even when I got like the worst prognosis in the beginning, I really wanted to be there for him and to support him so that he can love life again, because he was always someone who really embraced, like, the full, 100% of like living life. And he was such a joyous and motivated person. So, yeah, when this happened to him and the doctors were telling us, all the kind of worst case situations and scenarios, which, I think they were right to give us a realistic
Yeah,
expectation given his injuries.
yeah,
Um, but deep down I still wanted to be there for him, and yeah, to kind of support him until hopefully one day he can have a quality of life, right? And to be able to enjoy his life again. And he was so motivated as well. And he tried so hard in everything that he did and in all the therapy sessions. So yeah, it's remarkable to witness the progress that he's made over the last 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what was the aftermath of that like?
Um, the aftermath is, yeah, I think not something that a person can imagine unless they've gone through, a life-altering
Yeah,
situation like this. I guess, in really kind of practical terms, it was the medical aftermath, right, of getting him to survive, getting him to live, and then getting him to regain like his functions and his abilities again, including, like I said, talking, like swallowing food, swallowing saliva, walking, using his arms, all of that. Then there was the administrative aftermath.
yeah,
He had a whole life and we weren't married. So I didn't have any legal rights to sort his affairs for him. So that could only be done then through having, court of protection involved, a deputy involved, all of that, which then required, for us to go out and find a lawyer,
yeah,
etc. And then the third, was the legal aftermath. So there was a criminal trial against the man who committed the hit and run, and then a civil case as well. So yeah, that. And then, of course, I guess in some ways, the biggest part and probably the longest lasting part is the emotional aftermath.
mhm,
Just getting all the first three things, kind of going and just being in the thick of it.
yeah,
And then after some time, just processing what's happened, because I think everything changes in an instant. And then you kind of are trying to just roll with it. And only afterwards do you realize like how much the ground has shifted, right? Yeah, almost like a natural disaster in some ways, right? Like maybe a hurricane happens or an
yeah.
earthquake happens. And then go back and you can see sort of all the pieces that have come undone.
Yeah, I mean, to you, my family, friends, losing my aunt, it must have felt like a hurricane that after it, after Hitman, it must have felt that time period it must have felt like a brick almost hit you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, going back onto the book, please could you tell us where we can find it?
Yes, you can find it on Amazon, so globally, and it's called A Part of You Stayed.
So I will put the link to the book in
Thanks.
the description. Um, please could you would you mind reading us a little extra?
Yeah, sure. 28th of December 2015. Status. Even with all our prayers and bargains and desperate hopes, it still seems like it is not enough to contain him. Bart still hasn't woken up from the coma. His intracranial pressure is still too high. The doctors have stopped intubating, opting for a tracheostomy to deliver oxygen directly to his lungs via a tube inserted into his neck. I never understood how many systems the body managed invisibly until I saw what it meant to keep them alive manually. One of his eyelids has lost the ability to fully close. So, despite the nurses moistening his eye constantly with a wet pink spoolie, a thin layer of pale yellow crust has begun to form over his right eye. I wonder if he's in pain, somewhere inside the stillness. His blood work hints at an infection the doctors cannot yet trace. After visiting hours, I walk with my friend to the tube station, but I can't go home. Home is unbearable. The only direction I know is towards Bart. My plan is to sit in the ICU lobby and call the nurse in his room. I tell myself I won't go inside and disturb him, that it's enough to just be close. But when I sit down on the cold plastic chair, the quiet wraps itself around me and the need to see him becomes too much. I call my friend, needing her to tell me that I'm not crazy for going back to the hospital. She tells me Bart will probably feel that I'm near and my presence will bring him comfort. I don't know if she truly believes this, but it is the permission I've been secretly waiting for. I buzz the nurse in charge tonight, and with a kind nod from her, I slip into his room. Because of his mysterious infection, we have to wear PPEs whenever we go near him. So I gown up, slipping on a plastic apron and gloves, and then I stop. I'm immediately arrested by the small yet momentous change in the room. Between the crowd of machines, under the tangle of tubes and wires, his eyes are open. Bart's eyes have always betrayed him. When he was tired or ill, the corners would drop slightly, the bright sky blue would turn a muted grey. Today, one eye is sticky and glazed, the other pale, glassy, and wide. His pupils are huge, almost swallowing the color of his iris. His gaze is unfocused, searching. I can't believe it. He woke up. His eyes are actually open. I feel my knees weaken. I've imagined this moment 1,000 times, and yet it floors me completely. Tears spill down my cheeks, blurring my vision. I want to run to him, to kiss him all over his beautiful, broken face, but I can't. I can't touch him, not without risking an infection, not without hurting him. I look at the nurse Siobhan in disbelief to confirm that I'm not hallucinating. She smiles. I was going to call the family in the morning. He just opened his eyes about half an hour ago. We've informed the doctors. I nod silently, still crying. Thank you, I managed to say. I hold his hand and take it all in. We've now officially crossed over, from wondering if he will survive to knowing he is alive. His eyelids flutter and close, struggling against the effort, and opens them again a little when he hears my voice. His gaze focuses right on me, no longer searching. I hold his hand with my gloved one and tell him I'm right here. I try to imagine what he's thinking, how he's feeling. His mind is a place I know so well, yet now it feels like a distant shadow country I cannot reach. I don't know what he understands, maybe nothing, maybe everything. I imagine the confusion, the pain, the sadness he might feel. I imagine him trapped somewhere dark and cold, reaching for the outside world. He tries to move his lips, like he wants to say something, but even that small tremor seems to take so much effort. It's okay, I whisper. Take it easy, my love. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Bart so often felt my pain more acutely than his own. Like that time when my father ended a short administrative email by telling me he was starting a new family. I couldn't cry for myself, but Bart did. He cried for the hurt I couldn't voice. He always did that. He carried my sorrow without question, and now it's my turn. I will carry his pain, his sorrow, his fear. The doctors have repeated time and time again that even if Bart comes out of his coma, there's no way of knowing how he will emerge. Two people with identical injuries and identical physical attributes can recover with drastically different outcomes. But what we know for sure is that Bart sustained a very serious brain injury, especially in his frontal lobes. Cognitively, the outlook seems to range anywhere from being in a vegetative state to Bart taking on a completely new personality. Because the extent of his injuries also extend to the motor cortex, physically, Bart could be paralyzed or wheelchair bound for the rest of his life. What is clear is that no matter what, he will have very severe disabilities and limitations. But right now, in this moment, I see him. Inside those gray, glassy eyes, I see the Bart who ran marathons, spoke 5 languages, who loved a good dance as much as a good debate, the man I traversed the world with and relished every morsel of what life had to offer. I see you, he used to tell me. I see you, chicken. I see you, I whisper to him now, using the pet name I had given him, reminding him and perhaps myself of who he is. I tighten my hand around his and tell myself, whatever happens, however he comes back, I will make sure he can enjoy life again.